The glass doors of Sky Tower swung open, and Nairobi's morning sun poured into the marble lobby like molten gold. It was 8:47 a.m., and the air buzzed with the click of heels, the hum of smartphones, and the sharp tang of imported perfume. Sky Tower, rising above Westlands, was Kenya's pulsing heart of wealth, a 20-story monument where billion-shilling deals were sealed over cappuccinos and CEOs strutted like kings. But in one electric moment, the lobby froze. A scream sliced through the noise, sharp as a panga cutting sugarcane. "You clumsy old fool, are you blind or just useless?" Njeri Wanjiku, 24, stood at the center of the chaos, her manicured finger jabbing the air like a spear. Her cream Gucci dress, tailored to flaunt every curve, bore an ugly stain, a splash of vegetable stew, no bigger than a 50-cent coin, smeared across her chest. At her feet knelt Mama Aching, the tower's cook, her hands trembling as she gathered shards of a broken soup bowl. The old woman's apron was frayed, her face etched with decades of toil, but her eyes held a quiet fire, ancient and unyielding. "Do you know how much this dress costs?" Njeri's voice echoed off the polished marble. "More than your entire life's wages, you useless woman!" The crowd, security guards in crisp uniforms, receptionists behind sleek desks, executives clutching briefcases, stood silent as graves. Mama Aching, on her knees, murmured, "I'm sorry, my daughter. It was an accident." But Njeri wasn't listening. Her stiletto flashed, catching Mama Aching in the ribs. Not brutal, but enough to make the old woman gasp, clutching her side as the tray clattered again. The lobby held its breath. A receptionist flinched, but bit her lip. A guard looked at his boots. Njeri tossed her braided hair, gold earrings glinting like tiny suns, and spat at her. "People like you are why Kenya stays backward, old, slow, crawling around with your pots like a cockroach. Why don't you vanish?" She spun on her heel, her stilettos clicking like gunfire, and stormed toward the golden elevator. Mama Aching stayed on the floor, the stew soaking into her apron. The crowd melted away, pretending they'd seen nothing. But Mama Aching's lips moved, her voice a whisper. "Pride goeth before the fall, my child." Njeri Wanjiku was no ordinary woman. She was the only daughter of Mzee Kamal Wanjiku, the managing director of Sky Tower Limited, a man Nairobi called the Lion of Westlands. His name opened doors, silenced rivals, and moved billions in bank accounts. He had built his empire on cunning and ruthlessness, outmaneuvering countless competitors to dominate the city's real estate. Sky Tower wasn't his. He owned no shares, but he ruled it like a king. Board members bowed to his will. Employees whispered his name in awe, and his signature could build or bury careers. His wife, Njeri Wanjiku, was the queen behind the throne, her family's wealth rooted in colonial-era estates in Kiambu. Together, they'd built an empire, and at its heart was Njeri, their miracle child. Njeri's birth came after years of pain, miscarriages that left Njeri weeping in secret. When Njeri arrived, adopted from an orphanage in Siaya, they swore she'd never know suffering. They told her she was their own, hiding her origins. They gave her everything: private schools in Karen, shopping sprees in Dubai, a Range Rover for her 18th birthday. If she broke a chandelier, they replaced it. If she failed an exam, they paid for the grade. "My daughter is perfect," Njeri would declare, her voice fierce like a lioness. "She's born to lead." So Njeri grew up believing she was untouchable. a princess in a world of nobodies. At 24, she was a senior executive at Sky Tower, a title Mzee Kamau gifted her straight out of university. Her degree was in fashion design, not business, but that didn't matter. She strutted into boardrooms, scrolling Instagram while managers twice her age stammered through reports. She fired interns for lukewarm tea, mocked drivers for their village accents. The staff called her Madam Trouble behind her back, but no one dared speak up. Why? Because her father was the Lion of Westlands, and Yokabi's glare could freeze a room. Njeri believed Sky Tower was her birthright. After all, she was a Wanjiku, wasn't she? She loved the power, the way guards jumped to open doors, the way secretaries scurried when she snapped her fingers, the silence that followed her footsteps. At night, she partied at Kiza Lounge. Her friends, Wairu, Kipto, and others cheering as she bought rounds of champagne. On Instagram, she posted photos captioned, "I can never be broke. Money is my language." Her followers ate it up, flooding her posts with fire emojis. To Njeri, Sky Tower wasn't just a building, it was her kingdom.
Mama Achieng had worked in Sky Tower for 10 years, her hands rough from stirring pots of ugali and chopping sukuma wiki. She was a shadow in the cafeteria, her gray hair tucked under a faded headscarf, her smile warm but fleeting. No one knew much about her, only that she came from a village in Siaya and lived alone in a one-room house in Kibera. She never complained, not when the gas ran out, not when staff forgot to thank her for meals that fueled their long days. But her eyes, sharp and ancient, saw everything. That morning, she'd been carrying a tray of stew to the executive lounge when Njeri, rushing in with her phone glued to her ear, crashed into her. The tray slipped, the stew splashed, and Njeri's fury erupted. Mama Achieng didn't cry or curse. She picked up the broken bowl, mopped the floor, and limped back to the kitchen, her ribs aching. But as she stirred a new pot, her lips moved. "The truth will come out," she whispered, her voice steady as stone. The tower buzzed with gossip. "Did you see Madame Trouble kick the cook?" a cleaner whispered in the break room. "She's lucky it wasn't worse," a guard muttered. But no one reported it. They feared the lion's wrath. Only Wambui hesitated, her fingers hovering over her phone. She wanted to text someone, but fear won. The elevator dinged and Sky Tower moved on. Mama Achieng returned to her work, chopping onions with a steady hand. The other cooks glanced at her, but she shook her head. "Let it be," she said softly. "The day will come." They didn't understand, but they didn't ask. Mama Achieng was a mystery, her calm like a river hiding deep currents. What no one knew was that she had built Sky Tower 30 years ago with her own savings and a fierce mind for business. A decade ago, after a profound personal tragedy and facing a desperate situation as a young, single mother, she had given up her newborn daughter for adoption in Siaya. To protect her child from a life of hardship, she stepped back from the company to grieve, handing control to a board she trusted. However, whispers of Mzee Kamu's increasingly dubious dealings reached her ears. She'd returned as a cook, a silent, watchful shadow, observing his mismanagement and gathering evidence, waiting for the opportune moment. She wore simple clothes, adopted a quiet demeanor, and her face, weathered by time and sorrow, allowed her to blend in, unseen by those who only remembered her as the powerful founder. At 2 p.m., the golden elevator hummed to the 20th floor. Mama Achieng stepped out, her frayed apron gone, replaced by an elegant Kitenga dress. Her headscarf was off, her gray hair neatly braided. The security guards at the boardroom entrance froze. "Mama Achieng? What are you doing here?" one stammered. She smiled, her eyes like embers. "Tell the board Achieng Odiambo wants to speak. Tell them the sleeping lioness has awakened." Inside the glass-walled boardroom, Mzee Kamu sat at the head of the table, his silver cufflinks glinting as he pitched a new deal to investors. The board, directors, shareholders, executives nodded like loyal subjects. Then the guard knocked. "Sir, someone named Achieng Odiambo is here." Mzee Kamu frowned. "Who?" An elderly board member, Mr. Otieno, gasped. "Achieng Odiambo, the founder." The room went still. Mr. Otieno, a long-serving, honest board member, had only known her name through company legends, never having met her in person until now. Achieng Odiambo was a legend, the woman who built Sky Tower with her own hands. She'd vanished 10 years ago after a profound personal tragedy, a child given up for adoption. No one had seen her since, or so they thought. The doors opened, and Mama Achieng walked in, her posture straight, her gaze unyielding. She carried a worn handbag, but her presence filled the room like a storm. She looked at Mzee Kamu. "Get up from my chair," she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. He laughed, nervous, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. "Madam, you're mistaken. I'm the managing director." She raised a hand. "Don't speak, Kamu. For 10 years, you've spoken. You've run my company like your personal empire. And today, your daughter, the child you raised to be a tyrant, kicked me in the ribs because a drop of stew touched her dress." The board gasped. "Njeri?" Mzee Kamu stammered, feigning ignorance about the incident, but the mention of her name tied his past actions to his present predicament. Mama Achieng pulled a brown envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. "These are my shares, 65% of Sky Tower. I never sold them. I stepped back to grieve." She paused, her eyes locking onto him. "I am Njeri's mother, her real mother. You adopted her from an orphanage in Siaya 24 years ago. You never told her, but I've watched her grow, cooking her meals while she spat on my name." The room erupted in murmurs. Mr. Otieno opened the envelope, his hand shaking. The documents were clear. Achieng Odiambo owned Sky Tower. Mzee Kamu stammered, "Madam, please, let's talk." She cut him off. "Sit down. Today I reclaim my company. You are no longer managing director, effective immediately." By 4 p.m., a memo hit every inbox. Njeri Wanjiku has stepped down due to internal restructuring. All communications will report to Achieng Odiambo, majority shareholder and chair. The news spread like wildfire across Nairobi. Twitter exploded with hashtags, hashtag Sky Tower scandal, hashtag cook turned queen. Memes flooded Instagram, from ugali to billions. Njeri kicked her own mom. Blogs ran headlines, the cook who owned Sky Tower.
Mzee Kamu's empire collapsed overnight. Auditors uncovered shady contracts, millions funneled to offshore accounts. His bank accounts were frozen, his Land Cruiser repossessed, his Westlands mansion seized by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Nyokabi locked herself in her room, unable to face the neighbors' whispers. Njeri stood in her father's empty office, the marble desk gone, the air cold. "Baba," she whispered, tears streaking her makeup. "I didn't know." Mzee Kamu turned, his eyes hollow. "You didn't know. You threw away everything I built with one kick. You shamed your own mother, Njeri. Your real mother." Her knees buckled. "What?" He nodded. "Achieng Odiambo gave you to us. We raised you, but you became a monster. Now go, face the world alone." Njeri left Sky Tower with nothing but her iPhone and a single dress. The shock of her father's words and the rapid unraveling of her world left her reeling. She first tried to contact her friends, sending frantic messages. Her friends, Wairimu, Kipto, and others who danced with her at Kiza Lounge, vanished. "No space, babe," texted Wairimu. "My house is full," replied Kipto. She tried to sell her designer dress and phone, but the prices offered were pathetic. Her credit cards were declined, her accounts empty. Her Instagram went silent, her stomach growling a language she'd never learned: hunger. A week later, Njeri stood on a dusty street in Umoja, her Gucci dress replaced by a borrowed t-shirt, her nails chipped, her look thin, her former glow replaced by a haunted pallor. She watched laborers mixing concrete, their backs bent under cement sacks. The sight of their sweat and toil filled her with a strange mix of disgust and desperation. "I can work," she told the foreman, her voice small, a raw admission of defeat. He laughed, a harsh, knowing sound. "You, with those soft hands, you look like a billboard model." She nodded, eyes down, the last vestiges of her pride crumbling. "I have no choice." Njeri's new life began. She carried cement bags until her shoulders screamed, mixed blocks under the Nairobi sun, her palms blistering. The workers mocked her. "From Range Rover to wheelbarrow. Hey, Omo, see rich girl life." Each tone stung, but she swallowed her anger, focusing on the pain in her muscles. At night, she slept on a thin mattress in Kibera shack, staring at the sky. "How did I get here?" she whispered, her voice breaking, the question a constant echo in her mind. Months passed, each day grinding away her pride. The dust coated her skin, the hunger gnawed her bones, but something else grew, a flicker of humility. She learned to mix concrete properly, to lift with her legs, to endure the searing sun. The taunts from her co-workers lessened, replaced by grudging respect for her perseverance. She started sharing her small meals, listening to their stories of struggle and resilience, realizing how little she had understood. One evening, exhausted, she sat by the roadside, her hands raw. A familiar figure approached. Mama Achieng, now dressed not as a cook, but as the chair of Sky Tower, her kitenge vibrant under the streetlights. Njeri froze, shame flooding her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears falling. "I didn't know you were my mother." Mama Achieng knelt beside her, her eyes soft but firm. "Pride blinded you, my child. I gave you up to protect you, a young mother with no means, but I never stopped watching. You hurt me, but I see you now learning." She paused. "The company is mine, but you are my daughter. Start again. Build something true." Njeri nodded, her heart heavy but lighter. The shame was still there, but now mixed with a burgeoning sense of purpose. She returned to Umoja, working not for wealth, but for redemption. She mixed concrete, saved coins, and enrolled in night classes, studying business. Slowly, she earned respect, not with money, but with effort, with shared sweat and humble laughter. Years later, she opened a small catering business in Eastlands. Her meals, ugali, sukuma wiki, stew, reminded her of Mama Achieng's kitchen and the lessons learned from both mothers. She never returned to Sky Tower, but she sent her mother a letter. "Thank you for letting me fall. It taught me to stand. And thank you for the meals you cooked, which now teach me how to feed others with kindness." Mama Achieng, now leading Sky Tower, kept the letter on her desk. She smiled, her eyes still ancient, still knowing. Pride goeth before the fall, but humility lifts you up. What did you learn from Njeri's fall? Share your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more folktales every day. Subscribe now.